we are all inherently in search of something sacred, something meaningful, something that is greater than us, beyond measure and comprehension, that we know in our hearts that there is something, that there's purpose, there's meaning to life and incarnation, the journey of one lifetime. It's it's something that we all ponder, I believe, at some point, or at least in myself, it's something that I've considered and thought about, wondered about. And I hope that, all of you, I do believe that those that are listening that have tuned into this channel, that have joined us in our search for lost paradise, that you, like me, have found yourself to be different than the masses and the many, that we walk in the opposite direction, that we don't follow the sheep, the cattle, in the way that they are being led to slaughter, and without even considering to where they are, moving, and having dedicated themselves to, they just follow in line and never even question as to, what's really going on around and beyond them. And so tonight I wanted to read, because it took me a while to remember which ancient text this story was related within. And I kept thinking that it was a different part of the Thracian Chronicles, the Book of Navi. But last night I was listening to Alpha and Omega Productions on YouTube, and I really liked their material. I like the way that he uses the speeches and the sermons of individuals like Carter Conlon and David Wilkerson and Derek Prince, these pastors of old, even though Carter is even still is the lead pastor, I believe, of the church in New York in Times Square. Um, but David Wilkerson, he passed on, and I believe he was the one that had started the church there, that in New York. But he had a vision in 1973, and I watched this video where he spoke about what he saw and the things that at that time were not relatable to the world. And he was even stated how he was hesitant to bring forth what he had seen, and that he would be mocked and made fun of, ridiculed, laughed at. But being a man of God and in service to the kingdom, he went ahead, he went forth with what he felt commanded and led to do, and he did share, and he gave great description. He brought forth in like 17 minutes the things that we now see unfolding in world. And a lot of that had to do with the birthing pains that are found in nature and with the earthquakes, the waves of the sea roaring, the things that Christ warned us about in the gospel testaments, uh, the testimonies of Matthew, Mark, and Luke, and the Apocalypse of Peter, and so many others that are not part of the canonical record. But I do believe, we are the fig tree generation, and that there are indications we are seeing plentifully signs in the heaven and in the earth that the idea of wars and rumors of wars, famines, pestilences, earthquakes in diverse places, the waves of the sea roaring, the deception where even the elect would be led astray in strong delusion, and that we are seeing this. And the other thing, we are seeing the bleeding over of the spiritual and the cryptid into this world, that there is a unnatural, an uncanny, where people are starting to see and experience what are the manifestations of legion. And there is also a fascination. The many are interested in the occult and are turning their backs on mainstream Christianity and what were the traditional values of America and the beliefs that we had, being led by the Most High and the blessings of it. But we are no longer embracing those things. And again, we see and have, and we talked about in the protocols, the Illuminati secret covenant, which I do want to remind everybody that currently, um, we do have a 30% off at sacredwordpublishing.com, where you can use the promo code just TY30 to get what is our largest discount of the year. And we always provided about this time to help people be able to access the material and to read and study for yourself the ancient manuscripts, which we have been blessed to be able to put together and to share and to disseminate for your consideration, that the Most High is without a doubt pouring out his spirit upon this generation and really upon all flesh everywhere. And that for those that are willing to seek, knock, look, and discover that answers are coming forth. And without a doubt, the strange nature of what is the supernatural is being projected into the minds and into the thoughts of everybody alive today, that you cannot escape what is the fallen angelic giant bloodline connection, the Illuminati, the sons of Belial, the powers that be, the New World Order, whatever it is that you want to call it. There is a force in the world that has been described and spoken about. John Kennedy talked about the secret societies and the secrecy, and uh, the Eisenhower talked about the military industrial complex. There's so many personas of what is the force of legion, the eye, the capstone eye on top of the Illuminati pyramid that has been working for thousands of years since being banished and removed from the heavens, that Satan, the adversary of man, and the adversary of the Most High, he's been working against us and attempting to lead everyone astray into worshiping what are the fallen angels as the gods, the pantheon of those from, heaven to earth. They came. And so I had talked about, just, when I talked about the one book about the Acts of Thomas, and I read the story about how the rewards are in heaven, and about how Thomas entered into and was assigned to go into this demonic stronghold where the dragon was worshipped and idolized, and that there was organized religion where people did, blood sacrifice, things of that nature, in order to appease the spirits and to commune with them, to conjure them forth, to have interaction with them. That this is taking place. And there's a lot of information also coming forth about ancient witches and the jinn, the spirits of the giants of old. People are also questioning as to the origin of evil and where these entities, where they had come forth and how they got here. And this is another reason and the importance of why we need to study and to read the books, the Book of Enoch, and the stories like the Kebra Nagas, because that information is contained therein. And it was written in order to give us the answers that we would need to explain and help others to understand these larger perplexities. Let me open the chat. Also, I just want to pray for my grandmother. I did receive a call earlier today that she had passed on. She was 96 years old, and now she's gone forth to be with my mother and my father and other members of our family. Her husband, who had died during World War II, that she raised 5 girls by herself. It was a difficult effort, I'm sure. But thank you, everybody in the chat. It's an honor to be here with you once more. I appreciate that, Dan, and I'm I'm really happy for her because 96 years, that's a long time to live. And when your body, like I'm only 53, and boy, I feel it, and all of us, the aging that comes with the incarnation in the flesh form and our being in a fallen state and living in this fallen world, it is not an easy task. Thank you, Prick. I appreciate that. I appreciate all of you. Thank you, Elo and Sherry. Blue girl, it's good to see you, sister. But all of us, we feel lost at different times. And so, with, because we were planning on going down in April, and I was to give a speech at a conference in Orlando, and then we were to go, my children and I, and to take the grandkids to see her. But I am glad that we were able to FaceTime and that she was able to meet and to see and to be overjoyed by the experience of being in the presence of Ella and Ezra. I know that she was deeply touched uh, by that opportunity. It would have been great to, share time with her in the physical, but at least the technology gives us a chance to bridge these gaps and to cross over these worlds and to be in each other's living room and to share time and space in that manner. I mean, we have no excuses anymore to allow things, simple disputes, disagreements, to disassociate us from our loved ones and to cause separation. Do, if you have the opportunity, for whatever reason it is that you may be disgruntled by a family member or somebody that's close to you. And I do understand that, you can't allow forces that are not positive and beneficial to linger in your life. And I also have made disconnections with certain individuals because I just won't allow that kind of negativity in my life. But wherever it is possible, and if you are able to overcome, these even especially slight differences, people allow just the most trivial and what seems to be on the outer, meaningless reason to separate them from loved ones. And then if something like this happens, not that this was the way it was for me and my grandmother, we were not estranged in this manner at all. But I'm just saying, for those of you that are, embrace the opportunity to connect and to share time, space, and memory with your loved ones, that we are all truly blessed to have even 1 second, one more moment of eternity to share and to say hello, to say and share how much we love each other and one another, and how important family is for our lives. And so I do pray that all of you realize this and that we all consider this as well. But when we return from this break, we'll go into the story I want to share with you. It's one that I've been wanting to read and to share with you once more, because I've only brought it forth one time, and that was in the reading of the Book of Ari, which there's so much material there, and it didn't have the focus that it will have tonight in sharing with you just the 2 chapters, 7 and 8 from the Book of Ari, which Ari is the Thracian word for the keeper of the secrets, the wisdom keepers, the guardians of the knowledge, which I believe that many of you are. Hello, brother Head Honcho. It's so good to see you. And I will, at some point very soon, get you that manuscript. Um, Isaac and I are going to work together to bring forth something, a graphic novel or something of that nature, on the movie script that I've been working on in regard to the Book of Enoch. And I'm excited about that because not only does he do incredible work, but I really would like it to come forth in a manifestation that would give all of you a chance to see the creative process that I'm going through in compiling what is the creative account of the narrative of the fallen angels and the giants and the rebellion and the judgment that came forth against them. It's going to be an exciting thing. Just another project. I've got so many that I'm working on even now. And so, but I'm going to do a real quick reread on that, real quick edit and get it to Isaac, and then we'll get moving on that. And hopefully we'll have something done for all of you very soon. All right, we'll be right back, everyone.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
I love motherhood more than I could have ever imagined. One of the most important things to me is nurturing a strong foundation in Yahusha's character in our children. That said, I made sheets that went over the fruits of the Spirit, the armor of God, the 10 Commandments, and creation days. Each day at breakfast, we would go over these and then read books like Cat in the Hat that just felt so void in meaning, but they loved the rhymes. I looked everywhere for rhyming biblical principles and couldn't find any. That's when I decided I would make them myself. Praise God, we now have our first book, Eliana and Ezra's Journey Through the Fruits of the Spirit, a first in a series. Every morning we now can continue to build strong principles even through rhymes, and I wanted to offer it to the babies in your life too. Please go to Sacred Word Publishing and search Fruits of the Spirit to get your copy, or you can go to prophecyforchildren.com. Thank you so much.
Believe that we are at the very beginning of what is going to be a bull cycle, and that this will last. Well, we've been in a bear market for 2 years now, so I think the turnaround will be beneficial. And of course, this is not financial advice. I am not a financial advisor. But in my opinion, with what I've looked at and what I've studied, I do believe that the charts are indicating that there's going to be an influx, especially of institutional money. Wall Street money is going to come into the markets when the ETFs are finally released, and there is going to be a Bitcoin and an Ethereum ETF. ETF meaning electronic traded fund, which, like the S&P, there's a basket of S&P stocks that people can buy and just gives you access to the entire market as far as you can do the Dow Jones or the Nasdaq or the S&P 500, and uh, it's just a bet when you buy those basket of um, stocks and companies. You're just betting on whether there would be uh, gains or losses, and the markets are also moving to an all-time high, and so um, I'm going to be covering that. I do believe we're going to get a correction at some point in the near future, but that the strategy should be buy the dips right now while the trend is your friend, and while we are moving into this bull market, that you should be buying the dips. And just to give you an example, and then I'll move on. I had a friend who came over. It was September of 2022, and I helped him to set up his Coinbase account and to just buy $500 worth of Bitcoin. Just $500. It was his first purchase and first time he had ever done anything like this. And then he lost his password, didn't know how to really get back into his account. And I told him it was lost, not to worry about it, and showed him how to get access again with his forgotten password when he came over. And this was just 2 weeks ago. He came up and hung out with me, and I got him access to his account again. And his account was now $886. He made $386 off of $500 of Bitcoin. In what was, I was able to get him in when it was like 16,000. So he got in near the low end of the market. And now we are at 38,000, and I think we are moving upward towards what will be 42 to 48 at some point once the RSI cools off a little bit and once there is this correction. So, as I said, the trend is your friend, and that if if you don't have a lot of time to learn and to trade, um, that you can, again, dollar cost averaging, and right now buy when it's red. Buy when it's red, and I think you'll benefit. But anyways, let's go ahead and get into this text. And as I said, I will at some point be doing a show to talk about some of these things. But I think, people also, this is the last thing I'll talk about this. People ask me as to what coins, and I do think there's a lot of momentum in the altcoins, but for those that are uncertain, unsure, and if you're not familiar with the market, I think that Bitcoin, Ethereum, and Solana, those three are, really all you need to invest in if you're going to, and that you will benefit. All right. Again, I'm not a financial advisor, but be blessed in all that you do. All right, chapter 7. This is the book of Ari. I'm going to read a little bit before the actual story that I wanted to get to, but it's only, as I said, 2 chapters, so we should be able to cover it with no problem, and to give you, the context leading up to what I wanted to share and focus on. And I think that because most people have never heard about the Thracian Chronicles and are not familiar with this story and how it aligns with exactly where we are. I mean, this was a Josiah moment for the Thracian Empire, and they actually did embrace it. And because of that, tragedy was averted. All right, let's get into it. King Navaka was faithful to his father's covenant and to the god of Thracia, Thrace, and he reigned with wisdom and mercy over all Egypt. Um, just because you may not be familiar, but again, the Thracian Empire precedes the Sumerian and was older by 2,000 years. And the Thracian Empire was the one that preceded the Greek, the Roman. It is the origin for where they receive their their traditions, and and of course, the Greeks and the Romans, they were pagans. They celebrated and they worshiped the fallen angels, but the Thracians, they worshiped the triune Godhead, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And also, they ruled in Egypt. That the hieroglyphic system is based upon the ancient Thracian writing system. And um, this was decrypted by Dr. Stephen Guide and his brother Savetan Guide, who is the bishop that comes on with us and talks about and shares information about the Thracian, the people, their traditions, their ancient manuscripts, all of that. And he was the one that spoke at the conference from afar. All right, let us continue. Since his childhood, he was dedicated to the secrets of the divine speech and the mysteries of Thrace. Due to his great wisdom and righteousness, he was considered by everyone to be the most just ruler in all the lands because his glory was spread out beyond the big green sea, the Mediterranean, and to the end of the world. Noble and ignoble, big and small, strong and weak, were coming from everywhere to him to seek wisdom, justice, and advice because there was nothing hidden from him under the sun. Whatever he pronounced, it was fulfilled because visible and invisible ones were listening to him. One day, one came to him for advice and help. To the great priest of the temple of Tai, Ubnar himself, he was one of the most respected and powerful people in all of Egypt, who was enlightened and strong in the sacred sciences, the Orphic understanding. Everyone admired his wisdom and knowledge except his own wife. She despised him and secretly was committing adultery with a young, handsome man from Memphis. Every time when her husband was out for work, she commanded her maids to make a gorgeous pavilion next to the lake in the garden, and there she was with her lover, sharing gifts and embraces. She was spending long hours with him, sometimes days and nights. And Ubinar knew his wife was cheating on him. From the servants who used to see her with the good looking young man, they were spending time together, intoxicated and adulterous under the pavilion roof, making plans on how to get rid of her husband. Ubinar loved his wife too much, but had no strength or desire to do something against her. His heart was in devastating pain, and he was about to lose his mind. This was the reason his servants advised him to meet with King Navka for some advice and help. When King Navka heard his story, he remained bemused and expressionless for some time. After that, he took clay from a small ivory chest and he made a small crocodile from it, a hand palm length. He gave it to Ubanar and said, when you go back home, throw this in the lake next to the garden in your home, and justice will prevail. Ubanar listened to the king's advice, and he did as Navka advised him. The next time when Ubanar was away from work, his unfaithful wife met her young lover for another act of adultery. And after the luxurious party, the young man went to swim in the lake in the garden as usual, but when he went into the water, a big crocodile appeared from nowhere, grabbed him with his strong jaws, and dragged him to the bottom of the lake. Nobody saw what happened, and the wife of Ubnar was waiting in vain for her lover for many days to come back. The servants told Ubnar that their mistress hadn't seen the young man for many days. The priest appeared again before King Navka to thank him for the change which took place without knowing what was causing it. And when the king Navka saw him, he said, Ubnar, take me now to your home, and I will show you one small miracle. When they arrived in the house of the priest, King Navka took the priest to the lake shore, and he said a few unknown words, and immediately the water split, and a big crocodile came out, still dragging in his jaws the young man who committed adultery with the priest's wife, and he was still alive. The king commanded the crocodile to open his jaws and to release the young man. After listening to him, the crocodile went back quickly to the bottom of the lake and disappeared. The king, Navka, dipped his hand in the lake and took out a small crocodile made of clay not bigger than a palm of hand, and the same one he gave to Ubnar to throw into the lake not too many days ago. Keep it if you need it for the next time, said he to Ubnar with a smile. To the unfaithful wife, he promised that next time he won't come and release from the deadly jaws neither her nor her lover. At that time, the judges punished with death all adulterers who did not repent. And King Navaka gave mercy and forgiveness to the sinners who repented, following the law of mercy of God, Dion Isus, the son giving Isus. King Navka had two sons, Tozort and Yemhotep, and all the many acts of righteousness of King Navka aren't they written in the books of Chronicles. After King Navka returned to his forefathers, his place was inherited by his son Tozort or Zoser, the great son of the great father. He built the first pyramid in Egypt. His brother Yemhotep inherited the wisdom and the secret knowledge of his father. He was a regent of his brother Tozort in all his deeds and the laws of Egypt. In the 18th year of the reign of King Tozort, the waters of the river Nile did not rise as usual and did not water the land with their life giving tide. 7 years already the river Nile did not rise to the necessary level, and more than half of the fields remained without water and were drying. There were years of unprecedented famine. The nation was lifting prayers to God for rain, and to the king for bread, as the famine was getting tougher with each passing day. The 7th year was the worst, and the king, Tozart, was in complete despair. The famine was so spread out that in all places the people rushed to rob each other. Hungry children were screaming in their mothers' hands. The elderly knelt in the dust waiting for death from the famine. Even the wealthy were suffering from poor food and despair, and there was no relief from anywhere. Even the temples were closed due to the lack of contributions, and God's altars and the holy places were abandoned. No one from the king's advisors had an answer to what shouted, "Be done to make the situation better," until the answer came from the wise oracle, Yemen Hotep. "I will go to inquire for an answer from the ancient book with the godly words, Enoch's complete doctrine of wisdom, which is kept in the temple of life." For sure, it is written in this book, which is the spring of the river Nile, and what are God's powers which control the level of the waters. If I found the exact words of power from the divine speech what the Lord God alone pronounced and commanded the course and the current, then definitely the balance will be restored and the desolate land revived. And when he went into the temple of the word of God, Yemhotis began looking for the right words written in the book of life. As in God's word, only he had the wisdom given to him from above to read and to understand the ancient manuscripts. He spent many days gazing at the holy letters and the lines looking for an answer about everything which controlled the river of life. He found the text he was looking for, and he found the reasons for the disasters in the land and how he could bring back the fertility of the land and the balance of the world. He appeared with boldness before King Tozart, and he revealed to him the following: "My brother, far away in the upper land, in the midst of the waters of the river Nile, is located an island, and the city called Eleph. It is the one whose foundations are the most ancient on the island, because this city was established on the top of the first earth mound, which rose from the dark waters of the flood. The hills which protect the city were from red and black granite and abound with gold, silver, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, jasper, and carnelian. There is a temple in the heart of the city, which is called the Joy of Life, and deep under the temple are located the springs of the river of life, the Nile, which come out from two caves, wombs in the earth, and immediately when the time for the rising of the waters comes, they receive power from the reservoirs of God, the Creator Himself, who made man from clay. And He sculpted him as the potter sculpts his vessel on the potter's wheel. The God of our fathers, He is the one who gives the water of life, and he makes the river of life to water the whole world. He holds the keys for death and for Hades and for the two wombs which open the fertility of the land. Yes, he is the only master of the wheat and the barley, of the fruits and the vegetables, of the trees and the flowers, of the birds, the fish, and all the animals, and the whole of nature is like a beautiful attire to him. Only upon him depends the prosperity of Hemus, Thrace, Thracia, and Hemi, Egypt, and the whole world. When King Tozert heard these words, he was very delighted that in the borders of his kingdom exists such a holy and strong place. And immediately he opened the books containing the rituals and the mysteries to find among them the ones which honor the great God, the Creator who created the first Adam. He is the one who sculpted everything visible and invisible with his mighty hand, and who has the keys of the springs of life and death and the whole of nature. In order to gain favor from God, he restored the ancient rites and spent a whole week in liturgical services and processions to the holy places, accompanied by many of the priests of God, the sun-giving Isis, and by the oracle Yenhotis himself. On the eve of the great feast, the consecration of the waters, while he was in his bed, in his dream to him appeared the image of God's Lamb, God the Creator himself, and he was standing next to his bed. King Tozart immediately jumped out of bed and quickly bowed down to God and kissed the ground in front of his feet. Then God spoke to him like he was speaking to a friend. I am the God of your fathers and the creator of the whole of humanity. My right hand supports and affirms your kingdom. Didn't I give you the whole of Egypt, which is rich in gold, precious stones, grain, and every other good? Why then are my temples left without contributions, and my priests are forced to close them and to starve? Don't you know that when my temples are closed, then the springs for the river are also closed? And when my priests are starving, the whole nation is destined to starve. All right, we're going to hold up here for just a minute. We're almost at break, and I think this is an appropriate place to stop and to consider, especially the last two sentences, and this will be the focus of the story when we return, and how it was that they restored the blessings of the Most High upon the nation and the people. All right, we'll be right back for a second hour.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda, and Kenya.
Your support is crucial for the development of the ecclesia of real truth seekers.
We thank you for joining us in hosting Secrets Revealed, Momentary Zen, the Digital Readers Club, Ask Me Anything series, and other shows that have helped lead so many to the truth of salvation.
To become even more involved, please visit patreon.com/sacredwordpublishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world. As a bookstore for truth seekers, it's our goal to make ancient manuscripts which were once held captive by secretive institutions available for public consideration. In our generation, where wisdom has increased as Daniel the prophet foretold, we have access to many of the testimonies our early church brethren were persecuted for preserving. After being hidden for centuries, these manuscripts have been leaked from various sources throughout the earth, and it's our goal to gather these sources into printable form to make available for all who seek the ancient way. If you're looking to deepen your studies of the biblical narrative, find these ancient manuscripts and more at sacredwordpublishing.com.
I love motherhood more than I could have ever imagined. One of the most important things to me is nurturing a strong foundation in Yahusha's character in our children. That said, I made sheets that went over the fruits of the Spirit, the armor of God, the 10 Commandments, and creation days. Each day at breakfast, we would go over these and then read books like Cat in the Hat that just felt so void in meaning, but they loved the rhymes. I looked everywhere for rhyming biblical principles and couldn't find any. That's when I decided I would make them myself. Praise God, we now have our first book, Eliana and Ezra's Journey Through the Fruits of the Spirit, a first in a series. Every morning we now can continue to build strong principles even through rhymes, and I wanted to offer it to the babies in your life too. Please go to Sacred Word Publishing and search Fruits of the Spirit to get your copy. Or you can go to prophecyforchildren.com. Thank you so much.
All right. Welcome back, everybody, for our second hour. And for those that are in the chat, if you are wondering what I'm reading from, what I'm covering, it is the Book of Ari, the Thracian Chronicle Book of Ari. And this is the story of the restoration of devotion and the worship and what was donation to the temples and in support of the priests. We know that the Most High with regard to the Levites, he made their portion what was dedicated and contributed and brought into the temples, and that the people made offering where they would bring in beginning with the first fruits, the omers of barley and wine and oil and pomegranates and figs and the wheat. There were seven sacred crops that they wouldn't even begin to eat of the New Year's crop until the high priest made an offering of it to the Most High God. And then afterward, they would begin to eat of the first fruits. I mean, of the, the fruits, the harvest. But always the first fruits were given to the Most High in honor, dedication, gratitude for the blessings that He had poured out upon them and had given and granted to them. Okay, I'm just looking at the chat room. Somebody's asking about one of the names. Oh, yes, Imhotep. That's who you're asking about. True Seeker in his service says, Imhotep was the chancellor to, excuse me, the chancellor to Pharaoh at the time that Moshe led the Israelites through the Reed Sea. Huh. What I am reading from, this was before that time. But I did read in the last show, excuse me. In the last show I did a couple of weeks ago when I covered the Thracian epistles, I shared a story of the Hyksos, and it shared the epistle was about how Moshe was stood up, brought up, given, and made the leader to guide the Israelites out and to make them a nation of priests and prophets. And that initially they were like misfits, that they were the people that were um, the downtrodden, people with disabilities, people that were poor and wretched, and that they were gathered and moved and given a land of their own within Egypt. And then the Most High raised up Moshe. But anyways, check out that story. But what I am reading from now is this is definitely not this same Imhotep, because this is a time when the Thracians ruled. And I said this was even before Sumer. Um, I did read in chapter 6, it goes through the table of nations, and it talks about the kings that were raised up at that time. And I believe it makes mention of an individual named Sir, which maybe I'll go back to that. But let me finish this story first. Let me share with you the rest of the narrative, because I want to at least get this story out to you. And then it does make mention of as to who. Um, at the end, it talks about who was in charge. And I believe that this is the line of Orpheus, who was the Thracian priest king. It says, "Why then are my temples left without contributions, and my priests are forced to close them and to starve? Don't you know that when my temples are closed, then the springs for the river are also closed? And when my priests are starving, the whole nation is destined to starve. Why then are my holy places abandoned, as are the liturgical services? The nation which abandons its God and the liturgical services also abandons its own prosperity. But because you have chosen wisdom since your childhood," this is sort of like Solomon. And it's interesting to me that it speaks about 7 years of famine. And again, I think this was a foreshadowing of what they would later go through um, with, Joseph and Pharaoh. Was it Ramses? All right, but anyways, let us continue. But because you have chosen wisdom since your childhood, and you interceded for the whole nation, and in the day of a disaster you called on my name, and you restored the ancient services in my temples, and because you honored my holy priests and my holy places. For this, here I am opening my treasures for you and for the whole nation, and the reservoirs of my living waters will open to water abundantly the land, and the level of the river of life will rise to the measure of abundance, and there won't be famine and death any longer, but comfort and abundance in the whole kingdom. Here I make everything new." And when God said these words, the vision faded and disappeared, and King Tozort woke up joyful and grateful to God that he forgave his people and he would bless again his country with fertility and abundance, so that such a calamity never happens again. King Tozart ordered a full recovery of all the temples, the holy places, all the liturgical services and mysteries performed in them. He also commanded the restoration of the mandatory contributions in the temples of God, which is the 10th portion of everything acquired under the sun, according to the commands of God's covenant with the fathers. All the ordinances of the kings were carved on stone, so they could remain for an everlasting law for all living in the country, from the small to the big, from the poor to the rich, regardless of if the person is a citizen of the kingdom or not. God the Creator fulfilled his promises. He opened the springs of heavenly treasures, and The waters of the river abundantly were watering the whole country. The abundance and prosperity were overflowing in the whole country, and the kingship of King Zoser was remembered as the golden era in the land of Hemi, Egypt. So King Tozert is Zoser. And perhaps, you can look up to see when he ruled, but I have no idea. But again, I think this was, in the ancient times, but I'm not positive. All right, let us continue. And aren't the many deeds of righteousness of King Tozart written in the books of the Chronicles? So if that's the Chronicles, that is no, this is the Thracian Chronicles. But I was thinking, is this the Chronicles that we find cited in the Bible? But no, these are very, very much more ancient than uh, the Bible that we have and the canon of it. And after King Tozert died and went to be with his fathers, in his place reigned his son Sechem. And like his father, Sechem was a builder of pyramids, but the biggest one was built after him by Hufu, which is Cheops. I'll read just a little bit more because this is giving some of the as to who came to reign and during, and if you can find these names associated, perhaps you can get a better understanding of what time this is. And maybe it is a later time. I don't again fully know. The reign of Thracia lasted for a long time. And as I said, the ancient Egyptians, their culture and even the hieroglyphic system is based upon Thrace. But certainly, the Thracians were not pagan worshippers of the idol gods that the ancient Egyptians came to worship. All right, let us continue. Just a little bit more, and then we'll go to commentary, and I'll take questions for the last 30 minutes of the show. While the ancestors and forefathers of Ser, or Ter, Tser, reigned in Hemi, which is Egypt, the children of his older brother Bisoi reigned over Thracian Emus, and in the lands of all Thracia, Thrace, and the coast of the Pont, which is the Black Sea. They're descendants of the other sons of Yatuef. I'm guessing that's Japheth. Yatuef, Yatuef, expanded their kingdoms according to the order of their share in Mysia, Asia, and even to Phoenicia. When the descendants of Odrys were established, they took the chosen share of the kingdom along the river, even to the Thracian Sea, or what is the modern day Aegean Sea. And his brother Get north to the delta of the Pison, which is Ythros. Get reigned in the north and east, and he became the father of all the Geti. Bishoy reigned in the west and in Hamath, and he became the father of all the Bethi. Odris reigned in east and south, and he became the father of all Odrisi. Here is the generation of Bishoy. Ahri and Adon, the two sons. Ahri took his former throne among the Bessi, and Adon spread out further south, and he became the father of all of Adoni, Edoni. The sons of Odris were Anak, Taran, and Sap. Oh, that's interesting because we know that the sons of Anak were said to be giants. And there is a giant named Saf. The throne of Odrisi went to his firstborn son, Anak. Sap separated with his army towards the south, and he became the father of all the Sapi. But, again, I don't know if this is, connected to that, but, just consideration from what I've learned and read in other stories. But again, the timing of when these things went down would be very interesting. But from what I understand of the Book of Ari, the Thracians and the sons and the children and the people born of them, they were worshipers of the Most High and the Word and the feminine Holy Spirit, as I said. Get had four sons, Gatan, Skit, Tanak, and Tibar. His firstborn son, Gatan, reigned on the throne of Geti after his father. His second son, Skid, extended his borders in the north, and he became the father of all the Scythians. That's interesting. The Geti were the most numerous from all the Thracian tribes because they spread out north, even to the Pison Delta, Eustros, south even to the islands, the Cyclades, in the Thracian Sea, and to the east even to Asia Minor. When they expanded much and multiplied among the nations, there they founded large kingdoms, among which the most glorious were in Caphtor, the island of Crete, in Gedesha and Asia Minor. In Caphtor was reigning the great Sev, who was familiar among all with Uzer. He was the first one to conquer and rule the tribes of Achaia. They paid him annual taxes in gold, and in young men for the army, and in beautiful virgins for the palace's harem. His name was fearful all over that land, and there is none who can oppose his great power. All right, we're gonna stop there. I'm gonna. One last thing here. The next, because I'll just read it. He built a big city in Caphtor, and he named it like his son, Knossi, but the Danians called it Gnosis. Now, wasn't that in Greece? And when his son Knossusi came to power, he built a palace like which there is none in the world except in Caphtor, because the palace of Knossusi was spread out on almost the whole city, and it had hundreds of royal halls, rooms, quarters, and warehouses, and one could only find his way with the help of a map or a sketch. All right, we'll stop there. So really quickly, just want to highlight one portion of the whole story. And this again was the focus of the narrative. And it had to do with why God removed the blessings from the nation, the Thracian Empire. And he came to the king in a dream and he said, I am the God of your fathers and the creator of the whole of humanity. My right hand, which is the word of the Lord, Christ, Jesus, supports and affirms your kingdom. Didn't I give you the whole of Egypt, which is rich in gold, precious stones, grain, and every other goods? Why then are my temples left without contributions, and my priests are forced to close them and to starve? Don't you know that when my temples are closed, then the springs of the river are also closed? And when my priests are starving, the whole nation is destined to starve. Why then are my holy places abandoned, as are the liturgical services? The nation which abandons its God and the liturgical services also abandons its own prosperity. But because you have chosen wisdom since your childhood, and you interceded for the whole nation, and in the day of a disaster you called on my name, and you restored the ancient services in my temples, and because you honored my holy priests in my holy places, for this here I am opening my treasures for you and for the whole nation, and the reservoirs of my living waters will open to water abundantly the land. And the level of the river of life will rise to the measure of abundance. And there won't be famine and death any longer, but comfort and abundance in the whole kingdom. Here I make everything new. And when God said these words, the vision faded and disappeared. And so, again, I think this is where we are as a nation. Because the churches don't even open up to the homeless, and we throw away, look at all the food that is every day thrown out, and they don't allow it to be given to feed the homeless because of a possible lawsuit. I mean, come on, a lot of that food is perfectly fine. And then you're going to force people to dig in the garbage cans just to get it anyways. Why not provide it to them and to maintain meals? And so it's good to see that those kind of things are happening, because we throw away enough stuff in this country that it could probably feed and clothe maybe even the rest of the world. I don't know. But we are again at break. And so when we return, we're going to go into questions and commentary. So if you have any questions, put them in all caps, put them in the chat room, and I'll get to them when we return. We'll be right back, everyone. Be blessed.
Your partnership with Sacred Word Publishing goes further than the publishing of ancient manuscripts and weekly video content.
You also make a huge impact across the earth in orphanages in Myanmar, India, Uganda.
If you're waking up
and
thinking
Kenya.
that it's got to be more to your life than it is,
Your support is
Man,
crucial
believe
for the
that it is.
development of the
But to get to
ecclesia
that
of
light,
real truth seekers.
you're going to have to jump. See,
We
God
thank
gave every
you for
last
joining
one of
us
us
in hosting
a
Secrets
gift.
Revealed,
You've got to identify
Momentary
that
Zen,
gift. When you're standing on
the
the cliff of
Digital
life and you
Readers
see
Club,
people soaring by,
Ask Me
you hear
Anything
about them doing
series,
wonderful things. Have
and
you ever
other
thought,
shows that have helped
maybe
lead
this
so
person
many
right here
to the
has
truth of
identified their
salvation.
gift and
To
is
become
living
even
in
more
their
involved,
gift?
please
The
visit
only-
patreon.com/Sacred Word Publishing, where you can partake in exclusive, interactive, patron-only content and help us continue shining the light of love in this darkened world.
I love motherhood more than I could have ever imagined. One of the most important things to me is nurturing a strong foundation in Yahusha's character in our children. That said, I made sheets that went over the fruits of the Spirit, the armor of God, the 10 Commandments, and creation days. Each day at breakfast, we would go over these and then read books like Cat in the Hat that just felt so void in meaning, but they loved the rhymes. I looked everywhere for rhyming biblical principles and couldn't find any. That's when I decided I would make them myself. Praise God, we now have our first book, Eliana and Ezra's Journey Through the Fruits of the Spirit, a first in a series. Every morning we now can continue to build strong principles even through rhymes, and I wanted to offer it to the babies in your life too. Please go to Sacred Word Publishing and search Fruits of the Spirit to get your copy. Or you can go to prophecyforchildren.com. Thank you so much.
Anything. Um, but Shay says that it says that Imhotep was the architect of the Djoser step pyramid. And it would make sense. Djoser sounds like Zoser, which is the name in this manuscript. And she also says that various sources provide various dates for Djoser's reign. The professor of ancient Near East history, Mark van der Meyertoop, dates de Jozer's reign to somewhere between 2686 BC to 2648 BC. That makes sense to me. Because, let's see, Adam was said to be what, made somewhere like 3000 BC, somewhere thereabouts. And then we know Noah lived to be 930 years, is that correct? Methuselah lived 969, he was the oldest. And so Noah, he would have passed away like almost 1,000 years after, which would put us, if it was 3600 BC that Adam was created, or somewhere thereabouts, that would seem to be right. But yeah, thank you for looking that up. Shay also says that authors Joanne Fletcher and Michael Rice date his reign to 2667 BC to 2648 BC. So we know that it was in ancient times. And it would make sense to me because, again, as I said, that the Thracians established their empire post-flood. And that Orpheus, the ancient priest king, he was led by the Lamb of God, the word of the Lord, to find the ancient writings that Noah had brought over on the ark from his ancestors and had deposited in these clay pots, which I've read and shared that story. And perhaps I'll do another show where I speak about that and share that. And perhaps I'll mix it with, how the serpent seed survived the flood, because that's another portion of the ancient teachings that not a lot of people know about, and it's contained in the writings of Abraham. Good night, Mama P. Be blessed, sister. Okay. And it's interesting to me that, a lot of the ancient temple sites, they were built near and around, and the Most High brought the springs up. And the fresh water, the rivers of life, the waters, the fountains of life, they were important for the priests to be clean, and that they had to wash and bathe themselves within the springs. Even the proper uh, location of what is the temple, the real temple, Solomon's temple in Jerusalem, is said to be near and built over what was, I believe it's the Gihon Springs. And so interesting, very interesting, the story. And also, if you missed it, the account of that this place, it was the most ancient place in his kingdom. and that it was the place that first appeared after the flood. So again, he appeared with boldness before King Tozort or Tozer or Dejozer, and he revealed to him the following: My brother, far away in the upper land, in the midst of the waters of the river Nile, is located an island, and the city called Eleph. We'll have to look that up too. Eleph. See if there is such a place. Eleph. It is the one whose foundations are the most ancient on the island, because this city was established on the top of the first earth mound, which rose from the dark waters of the flood. The hills which protect the city were from red and black granite and abound with gold, silver, diamonds, emeralds, rubies, jasper, and carnelian. There's a temple in the heart of the city which is called the Joy of Life, and deep under the temple are located the springs of the river of life, the Nile, which comes out from the two caves or wombs immediately when the time for the rising of the water comes. They receive power from the reservoirs of God, the Creator Himself, who made man from clay, and He sculpted him as the potter sculpts his vessel on the potter's wheel. So let's look that up, and then I'll check for questions and comment. Let's see if this place still exists. There's a Aleph, Egypt. Does Eleph mean thousand or clan in Exodus? Okay, I don't see in Eleph, Egypt. Closest thing is Elfin, Aleph. So not currently do I see anything with such connections, but it was worth a shot. All right. There is a lot of discussion about growing food, and I think that is the most awesome skill set that one can have, and I think that that is worthy of time and attention that people who can grow their own food who know how to live off the land, who know also how to keep cattle, chicken, things like that. I think it's a very smart thing. People don't even know how to start fires. And I remember, back in uh, even when I was young and able-bodied, and I was able to start fires. Like, for instance, I'll give you um, this. Could even save your life at some point. But if you are, and if you ever find yourself in the wilderness and it had rained, and you're not able to find dry wood to start a fire, remember you just need a very small amount of dry kindling tinder to spark a fire, to begin to feed it, to grow it, and then you can throw on wet limbs. But what you can do is just look under stones, flat stones, even river stones. If you look under them, a lot of times you'll find small bits of wood, and most often the wood will be very dry, and especially if it's if it had rained or whatever, that it will cover um, and protect these small pieces of wood. And then if you look under enough stones, you can create a small pile to where you're able to start it, and it will burn very quickly. And then you can add all the wet wood to it, and then create a fire which is big enough to where you can warm yourself, protect yourself, dry yourself. Yes, bushcraft. Eric says, love bushcraft. I think knowledge of how to stay and survive and be in the wilderness and live off the land. Those, I do like to watch like that show Alone, and people that have the knowledge. I mean, I think it's very cool to be able to start a fire from, a particular type of wood with a bow and a drill and string, and or even when you're moving the stick back and forth in your hands with the palm of your hands, and able to cause the friction to create a coal, and then put it into, like, for instance, a bird's nest or something of that nature, or to use sap, or uh, some kind of fuel from the tree that ignites and sparks and creates and sustains fires very quickly. That is all just remarkable knowledge. People that have the ability to even, I saw this individual that he was on that show Alone, and he had colored his hair numerous different colors, and everybody thought he was kind of crazy, but he was so smart in that he just chopped off his hair, and it was like, some portions were bright yellow, green, whatever, but these were colors that were very attractive to the trout and to the native um, fish species where he was being sent, to compete with others. And you're only allowed to bring a certain amount of items. And so for him to be able to create these flies and to catch fish with his own hair, I thought that was ingenious. Sherry says that we camped for 6.5 months off grid while we were building our place when we first came here, and that was an experience. And we even put out a small first garden and wildflower beds that year. I bet that's amazing. What an incredible blessing. If I were able-bodied, that would definitely be one thing that I would want to do and to experience. And I had abandoned the conventional 9 to 5 when I was 22 years old. I No, it was even before then because that's when I published the book. I actually left when I was like 18, 19 years old. Lived in a van, published my first book about my experiences of breaking away from the 9 to 5. It was called Look Somewhere Different. My second book, When the Evening Dies. And that actually began with my grandmother's passing on my dad's side. And tonight it was my grandmother's passing on my mother's side. So, um, and the name of that poem that I wrote for her, because me and my father, we traveled to New Mexico from Atlanta. And when we got there, she had Parkinson's and she was bedridden and she was struggling. She wanted to see my dad so bad. She was holding on to see him, and we were able to get there, and he spent time with her, and I spent some time with her, but my dad stayed in the room, and it wasn't but maybe a day and a half after we were there, he told her, that it was all right for her to leave and to move on and to cross over, and she did. And I wrote a poem for her called Cuando se muere la tarde en la tarde, which means when the evening dies. And I thought it was appropriate because it was at night and in the evening that she passed away, and my dad was with her. And so I read the poem at the viewing, and then I buried her with it. I put it in her grave, and we buried her with it. But anyways, it was a very touching experience for me, and it was after that that I traveled across. I took I-10 all the way to Arizona to San Diego, and then took Pacific Coast Highway 1 all the way up to Seattle. No, to Eugene, Oregon, because I had picked up a hitchhiker and he took me into Eugene, and I gave him a ride there. And then after that, I went up to Seattle to stay with some of my friends and my ex-girlfriend, and then from there went across to Montana into West Yellowstone and south into Jackson Hole, Wyoming, where I decided to spend my winters because the land was beautiful. It was such an incredible place. If you've never had the chance to go to Yellowstone and to the Grand Teton National Park there in um, Jackson Hole, Wyoming, those are two of my most favorite places. And I wrote poems about seeing the Tetons and seeing Yellowstone Falls. And to me, those were two of the most beautiful places in America. Two others being the uh, south rim of the Grand Canyon, the northern rim of the Grand Canyon, and Chaco Canyon and the ancient cliff dwellings that are carved into the side of the cliffs and Mesa Verde um, in Colorado, and the Sequoia National Park, Zion, Kings Canyon. all of that. Those are beautiful, beautiful places. I never made it up to Glacier National Park. I always wanted to get there, but I never had the chance. It was always too cold, and so I had to end up heading south. But I decided my winters for the 4 years before my accident, before I acquired my disability, I spent every winter and went back to Jackson Hole, Wyoming, because I love the Tetons, and I worked across the stretch right beside the Great Teton, the Grand Teton at Jackson Hole Ski Resort. And I worked on, as a lifty there on the mountain, um, and had a chance to snowboard 3 hours a day on my breaks. I mean, it was the greatest adventure of my life. It was one of the most fond memories I have of being able to snowboard the mountains there. It was an incredible experience. And then looking back out over what was Sleeping Indian Mountain and watching the sunrise every morning while the town of Jackson Hole laid beneath the clouds, and we were always above the clouds. It was, hello, Marie. How are you, sister? Um, Being down under. Thank you for joining us. You know, where I used to spend a lot of time in these national parks, and I used to just I just drive off of the road and open the door of my van and stay in it uh, and do all that. But now, I'm concerned with all the cryptids that are being discovered and all the various places and those things that are being seen, and it's a little creepy. You have to be careful, is all I'm saying, because there are unusual things happening in a lot of the national parks. A lot of people, disappearing, and that's all unfortunate. So just be careful. You can't just go trudging off by yourself anymore. You just don't know about the things that go bump in the night. And now that, we're more knowledgeable, just have to be careful and prayerful and in relationship with the Most High, because He is our guidance, He is our protection. But I thank all of you again for joining me. I hope that you did enjoy the story of the restoration of Providence and how it is that we must support the the true temples and the true places of worship where the priests are doing the work of the Most High and supporting the poor and feeding the hungry and clothing the naked and taking care of the homeless. I mean, those are the things that we really need to be doing. Not building buildings, not buying Jaguars or expensive cars, not supporting people and buying jets. And I mean, that to me is ridiculous. And how people support these televangelists and, trying to buy new jets and expensive homes. And I just don't get it. I just don't get it. Let's give directly to those that need. That is the way of it, in my opinion. Anyways, thank you, everybody. Be blessed. I can't believe it's already December, almost December. It's crazy. We'll see you on Saturday. Join us for the Digital Readers Club. And thank you again. And remember,
censorship and regulation is becoming an ever-growing problem in today's modern media. From the mainstream to YouTube and Google, The information you're looking for is buried by official narratives and propaganda. This is why TFR is 100% uncensored, unregulated, and listener-supported. The shows on TFR are not micromanaged by the station, and our hosts are free to speak their minds however they please. As such, the views and opinions expressed on our station are of those who make them. If you happen to hear anything offensive on TFR, please send us an email to toughtitty@tfrlive.com, and we'll be happy to tell you that we really don't give a damn. We stand for freedom of speech and non-censorship. If you also stand for free speech, you can go to tfrlive.com/signup and sign up for a TFR supporter pass and help us in our mission to keep the airwaves uncensored and unregulated. TFR Live, your uncensored and unregulated protection from deception.
And so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you said you're alleging that you heard or that you witnessed ballots being put in the machine, run through